Hi, I'm Melita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian, and today I will be talking about my May wrap-up. May kind of felt like it went by fairly quickly. I'm looking at some of the books in this pile. I'm like, wait, really? Was that this last month? I did read 10 books for the month, which met my soft goal, which I'm really happy about. I managed to squeeze one in there last minute last night. Like I said, I did read 10 books. I also DNF'd 2, which I will talk about later, and know that it is not in my reading stats because that's just not what I do. With those 10 books, I read 2,743 pages and listened to 75.58 hours. I do count all the pages even if I listen to them, but I only count the ones that count the hours of those that I actually listened to. I also had one reread, which doesn't happen very often, so I'm pretty proud of that. So like I said, 10 was my soft goal, and I managed to meet it. I was fully expecting to only go 9, and that would have been perfectly fine too, but the fact that I met 10, I'm really happy about. And I passed my Goodreads goal, which was at 45. So, I mean, I get that it's a pretty low number, but it's a number that I know that I can reach and like not have that pressure. In terms of genres, I have 3 fantasy, 1 horror, 1 mystery, 4 nonfiction, and 1 sci-fi. I definitely leaned into the nonfiction this month. For formatting, I have 2 graphic novels and 8 novels. For source, I have 7 audiobooks, 2 physical, and 1 is a mixture of both. For audience, I have 7 adult, 2 young adult, and 1 children's. And then for country, so on this map, there's only going to be like 2, maybe 3 spaces marked, but ultimately, like, multiple of these books, I think a lot of the nonfictions were broader than an actual setting. I can get into that when I actually talk about the books, but ultimately, like, it was all over the United States. There wasn't just one particular space they were talking about, or it was all over the world, referencing in terms of that, not necessarily set in a particular place. Set in multiple places where I didn't feel like I should be pinpointing it directly. For author and publications, I had 1 debut, 7 new to me, and 2 that I've read from before. It was nice to have that 1 April wrap up of having more read from before authors than I had new to me, but I knew that wasn't gonna last, but that means that it has more of a chance later on, so I'm really excited. For publications, I have 3 independently published and 7 traditionally published. And of the traditionally published publishers, the highest one that I have is Simon & Schuster at 3. Years published, I have 1 from 1954, 1 from 1978, 1 from 2017, 3 from 2021, 2 from 2022, 1 from 2023, and 1 from 2024. And then in terms of rating breakdowns, I have 0 1 star, 0 2 star, 2 3 star, 1 3.5 star, 4 4 stars, and 1 4.5 star, 0 5 stars, and 2 that are not rated. In terms of my Pokemon cards choose my TBR, I only really completed 2 of them. So if you haven't seen my June TBR video yet, just as a spoiler for that I have extended my TBRs to 2 months, so I will only be doing the Pokemon cards choose my TBR every 2 months as opposed to 1. This is just to help me give me a bit of more room to be able to read the books that I choose for this TBR, as well as being able to kind of play around with it, because ultimately I am a mood reader, but I feel like the last couple months I have not been doing the best in terms of managing to read everything that's on my TBR, which is fine, but it's kind of just bugging me. So that's why I chose to do that. Pokemon cards for May that I was able to complete was Woobat, which is to read a thriller, and Stoutland, which was a contemporary. So I will get into those later on. And then there was also 2 that I DNF'd that were also part of that, and that was Scraggy, which is a horror, and Spirit Mask, which is a trainer item card, which was to read a library book. So we'll go ahead and get into these now. These are the 2 that I DNF'd. We'll get into is Spirit Mask. And for that, I tried to read Anthropology of Turquoise. This was a nonfiction book that is on my 24 of 2024 and basically goes into the anthropology of turquoise, supposedly. I read the first chapter of this and did not click with the writing style at all. Like, ultimately, it was just all about the author's life, which I understand to a degree, but it just felt like it was taking too long to get to the point of why turquoise. I just didn't care, so I didn't push myself to read it any further. So ultimately, yeah, that's a DNF, and that's the update for my 24 of 2024. The next IDNF was the one that I picked for Scraggy, which was a horror, which I had picked Delicious Monsters. This one is a young adult horror from my understanding. I had gotten this through Libby, and it was following multiple perspectives on multiple timelines. So we have this young girl who, I forget her name, my apologies, but she can see ghosts. She ends up like getting dumped, and after getting dumped, her mom inherits this house that she's been talking about for years and gives her the option of like, do you want to move there? And she's like, well, hell yeah, because she's like doesn't want to like see her ex anymore. So they go move to this house, which happens to be on, I don't know if it's like an island within a pond, within a lake or something. But they move to this island that has this big mansion on it, live in this little house next to it because that's all they really need, and they're going to turn the mansion into an Airbnb. The weird thing is, though, her mom won't let her into the mansion at all, but it turns out she's not the only one with like these paranormal powers of sorts. There's other folks on the island with like similar things going on, but there's ultimately stuff going on with the house. I guess the house is hungry of sorts. That's all I really got into it. I got to like 45% of the way through and just like didn't really care where it was going. Again, didn't really want to push myself to read it if I wasn't caring. I thought it was going to be like a softie enough and maybe I would have picked it up later, but ultimately I'm just like, I'm okay actually. So yeah, DNF that one as well. Those were the rest of these, like, I didn't complete whatsoever. So, but I am still very much interested in the books that I had picked out for them. So they will be going back. I did a lot of start and stopping in May. I feel like I like started a lot of books but didn't finish a whole lot of them. So let's now go ahead and get into the books that I did read for the month of May. And the first, it was actually a book that I had for, I think, April that I wasn't able to get to, and that was A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. This is a book of the month pick, so that's another one down. I think I'm still like, am I one behind? Yes, I'm still like one behind on that. But this is my second Shay Earnshaw. I've read another one of hers before and didn't like it. But this one is more of a culty vibe. I guess like Travis Wren has an unusual talent for finding missing people. A family ends up hiring him to find Maggie St. James, who is a prolific children's book writer who kind of writes on the darker side of things. But then Travis ends up going missing. Years later, Theo ends up finding Travis's old truck abandoned outside of his community, which basically is like a community of like-minded people that are not allowed to like leave the community for health reasons. Not health reasons. They think that there's like a rot outside of their community that like makes people sick. Yeah, it's Theo trying to figure out what's going on, along with his wife Chala, I believe is her name, Kayla, and her sister B. It was ultimately interesting. I will say I liked this one better than the other one, but it was okay ultimately. I don't know, I feel like the antagonist was pretty straightforward. There's no like big reveal to me, but the psychological element was interesting. So that's ultimately what kept me interested. I have one more from Shay Earnshaw that I want to try out, and like maybe another that's I'm a little interested in, but we'll ultimately see. I don't know how to feel about Shay Earnshaw's writing just yet. Next, I ended up reading I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. This was the one that was originally published in 1954, and I read this because this is like my brother's favorite book, so I actually listened to it through his Audible, and basically we are following Robert, who is basically the only one left after like this epidemic disease that like flooded society. It's actually relatively short. It's like 161 pages, so I'm trying to figure out how to talk about it without giving it away. The hero, Robert Neville, perhaps the last uninfected man on Earth, finds himself in a paranoid nightmare. By night, the bloodthirsty undead of small-town America besiege his barricaded house. Their repeated cry, "Come out, Neville." By day, when they hide in the shadows and become comatose, Neville gets out his wooden stakes for an orgy of slaughter. He also discovers pseudoscientific explanations, some rather strained, for vampires' fear of light, vulnerability to stakes through no bullets, loathing of garlic, and so on. Yeah, so basically this is what I imagine the movie with Will Smith is based off of, and I will say it just kind of used it as inspiration. This was okay in my mind. It's definitely not my favorite book, but it was interesting to read the source material of the movie, because now I understand why everyone was so pissed off about some of the changes. I will say I liked the movie for a movie's sake. As an adaptation, yeah, I can see why people are pissed off. Also, the title makes more sense within the context of the book. It was okay. I think I also gave this like 3 stars. Next, I ended up getting a book from the Advanced Listener. I got an Advanced Listener copy through Libro. My link for Libro is down in the description down below if you ever want to check it out. It's essentially like Audible, but it's not paying into Amazon's pockets. It's actually giving money towards independent bookstores. And it's the same price at $14.99. So I absolutely love it. But they had an Advanced Listener's copy of I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle. This one is a cast of characters trapped within their roles of dragon hunter, princess, and more must come together to take their fates into their own hands. Dragons are common in the backwater kingdom of Bellamontagna, coming in sizes from mouse-like vermin all the way to castle-smashing monsters. Gaius Aurelius Constantine Heliogabalus Thrax, who would much rather people know him as Robert, has recently inherited his deceased dad's job as a dragon catcher / exterminator, a career he detests with all his heart, in part because he likes dragons, feeling kinship with them, but mainly because his dream has always been the impossible one of transcending his humble origin to someday becoming a prince's valet. Needless to say, fate has something rather different in mind. I ultimately really enjoyed this. I think what did I give it? What did I rate? I gave this 3.5 stars, 3.5, 4 stars. Ultimately really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting storyline, and I absolutely loved the fact I loved our main character Robert as he was trying to figure out how to like not be a dragon exterminator and seeing his kinship with dragons. Yeah, I thought it was ultimately really fun, but I thought the ending was rather lackluster and rushed. And I believe this is the same author as The Last Unicorn, which I have yet to read, but ultimately thought it was a fun book. I absolutely love the cover, and I've heard that seen that the inner cover is fantastic as well. But because it's like 3.5 stars, I keep debating if I really want it. I think I may. I do want it. So next I ended up reading Cultish by Amanda Montell. This is The Language of Fanaticism. This is a nonfiction. I managed to listen to this in a day. It was a really interesting book. Let's see. What makes cults so intriguing and frightening? What makes them powerful? The reason why so many of us binge Manson documentaries by the dozen and fall down rabbit holes researching suburban moms gone QAnon is because we're looking for a satisfying explanation for what causes people to join, and more importantly, stay in extreme groups. We secretly want to know, could it happen to me? Amanda's Montell argument is that on some level it already has. I thought this was a really interesting book and thought it was really fun. It was really interesting to hear all of this, actually. Yeah, it was just figuring out how to define a cult itself was really interesting. I thought she had some really good perspectives. I think, my apologies if you can hear my cat. I gave this 4 stars. I had a lot of fun with it, and like I said, I read it in a day. It was really interesting, and I'm intrigued to listen to Amanda Montell's other work, The Year of Magical Overthinking. Is that what it is? The Age of Magical Overthinking. Next, I finished We Are the Middle of Forever, and that was actually my pick for Stoutland, which is a contemporary. This is a, what is this? I started this a couple months ago, and actually have, I actually have the physical copy. So I remember getting this from my local bookstore because it was really, I really like the basket on the cover. I don't believe, this is edited by Dar Jamel and Stan Rushforth, who I don't believe are native, but they go around and interview Indigenous voices from Turtle Island on the changing Earth. So there was like multiple people, like this is, they end up interviewing President Fawn Sharp, Greg Castro, Illyrian, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce that right, Mercelief, Lila June Johnston, Dr. Kyle Powis White, Stephen Pratt, Natalie Diaz. So like there's multiple, like there's like I think 20 people they end up interviewing and kind of just getting their getting their perspectives on the changing world and how it's affecting and what we need to do to change it. Ultimately, I thought it was really powerful. I thought it was really interesting. I didn't rate this. It was just really pleasant to listen to. It was really just calming, knowing that not only am I not the only one thinking of these things, but so are these other people, and that they're actually doing something about it. Not to say that I'm not trying, but I feel like one person can only do so much. So I feel like understanding that at least 20 of these people have these mentalities and have plans and have done certain things was really impressive to hear. So yeah, it was just a nice read. Next was my reread, and that was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, written by Judy Barrett and drawn by Ron Barrett. This is a children's book, and I've had it for a while, mostly because I remember, this is like, I guess my third time rereading it, because I remember one of my like elementary school teachers reading it to us as like a reading project, or like reading it in, maybe it was our librarian, but I thought it was really fun. And then it wasn't until like college that someone compared my artwork to these illustration styles, and so I got it. But now, and like within the month of May, Brad and I ended up watching the movie adaptation to Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, both the first one and the second one. So it made me want to read this to see how it differed. I will have a video coming out shortly of like, is the book better than the movie? But ultimately found that when it comes to this one, I think the movie kind of can stand on its own. The first one, the second one, not so much. Second one is okay, but it's not as good as the first one. But I do enjoy, I think there's elements of both that are really great. I really do enjoy this book, and it also made me realize that there's like 2 others within this series that I want to get, because I want to see how the book series expands on this universe. And basically it's like a grandfather telling his kids like a story of a place called Chew and Swallow that has weather events that instead of rain or snow, they get food. So like orange juice, like they get food 3 times a day. So no one has grocery stores or anything like that. So I thought it was really, I don't know, it was fun. It's always been fun. Oh goodness, I have like all of these physically. Okay, so the next was a nonfiction that I ended up finishing, and that was Salmon Wars, The Underbelly of Our Favorite Fish by Douglas France and Catherine Collins. It pretty much says it as it is, the dark underbelly of our favorite fish. Basically, they go and figure out the pros and cons of farming fish, and what's happening to our salmon, particularly Atlantic salmon, but also how fish farming has also helped with the demise of Pacific salmon, as well as Atlantic salmon, as well as other fish within the ocean, and how like fish industry needs to change. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I remember also getting this from my local bookstore and like love the cover design. Really thought it really interesting, and I love the color. But yeah, I thought it was like very eye-opening. I was really intrigued. This took me like 9 days to get through, but it was also just a lot of information. I think too, though, one of my critiques about this is that it's fairly repetitive in that they kept reiterating just how much and how bad open net fish farming is terrible in terms of because of how overcrowded they are, because sea lice and pathogens and the waste that comes out of open net farming, Atlantic salmon like destroys ecosystems and helps destroy native fish populations, and because there's certain companies that rule the industry that they won't change the industry. So yeah, it was ultimately really interesting. It was really eye-opening. It really makes me sad because I ultimately do love Pacific salmon. I've never actually bought salmon from the store because that's something that, as an Indigenous person whose tribe has had plenty of fish in the past, it was never something I had to buy. But now, in current times, and with decrease in Pacific salmon, particularly Chinook salmon population decline, we've had our salmon season closed for the last 2 years. So it's a scary prospect. Next one I finished was Everything You Wanted to Know About Indians But Were Afraid to Ask by Anton Truer. This I ended up listening to as well. I think I listened to it through Spotify, actually. But this, I mean, pretty much as it says, from the acclaimed Ojibwe author and professor Anton Truer comes an essential book of questions and answers for Native and non-Native young readers alike, ranging from why is there such a fuss about non-Native people wearing Indian costumes for Halloween? Why is it called the traditional Indian fried bread taco? What's it like for Natives who don't look Native? Why are Indians so often imagined rather than understood? So a lot of these questions are answered within here. I thought it was a really well-rounded book. I think Anton Truer definitely focuses in on a couple of tribes in particular because he is Ojibwe. He tends to focus in on certain aspects of Ojibwe culture or what he knows in terms of like Plains Indians versus, it's just like, I think there's more nuance in terms of, and more specifics that you could get into. If I understand that he answered in what he knows in terms of what the tribes he knows of and etc. So like, I don't know, there were certain aspects in terms of like people asking, or a question asking like, what are the different types of dances? And so he talked about in terms of the dances that he was aware of that aren't local here, or aren't done here locally, which it's fair. But I think as an overall, I think it was really good, really interesting. It's another one that I did not rate, but I do highly suggest for anyone who does have questions. This also worked for the Buzzwordathon prompt, which was to read a book with every in the title. So that worked out great. Next book I ended up reading was for my TBR choice of Woobat, which is to read a thriller. And so I ended up picking up Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. I also picked this up because this was the Literally Dead book club pick for the month, which was great timing because May 5th is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Day, or the Indigenous Peoples Day. But ultimately, and Kayla from Booksandlala, the host of the Literally Dead book club pick, asked me to join her in her live show, which I was so happy to accept, with Erin from ErinMegan, who I will have both linked down in the description down below if you want to go check them out. I do highly suggest it. We had our live show earlier this morning, and I will have that linked down below as well. So I actually feel like I kind of scrambled in reading this because I started reading it when she originally asked me about a week ago. And when it comes to physical books, I'm a bit of a slow reader because I end up reading every single word, is what I'm finding. But I also, because it was for something, I also want to make sure that I am understanding it. So I definitely tabbed it up quite a bit. This isn't even all the tabs that could be in it because I ended up running out of a couple of colors. So by the end, by last night, like I think yesterday, I started listening to the audiobook as well. And I had tried originally to listen to the audiobook and just couldn't get into it, so I started physically reading it. But then when I was running out of time is when I started listening to the audiobook again, and which turned out great. I think the narrator was actually fine. I just for some reason couldn't get into it originally, and I think it's because they're like, I don't know what was going on. But basically this one, we are following Anna Horn, who is feeling a bit unsettled. She's constantly having to look over her shoulder, whether it's because of the bullies that are picking on her at school, whether it's because her tribe is making these choices to better the tribe, but in what way is it better? Like, they have a new casino resort that's making it so that the roads are being paved, but it's also bringing new people to the reservation, and it's like killing some wildlife. But she's also having to look over her shoulder because there's a childhood fear that a disembodied head is following her around. So when women from the reservation are coming up missing, like, Anna believes that it's this fear, just childhood, like ancient fear that might be going on, until her sister is one of the women that end up going missing, and then she fears that it is actually something new that the casino brought. So this was very intense. I would say I have a vlog that will hopefully be out shortly having my full thoughts on it, but ultimately I did enjoy this. I am rating it 4.5 stars. I think it has really good messaging in terms of MMIW, as well as jurisdictional issues, race issues, bullying. So definitely content warning too, so definitely look that up. I think if you're looking for like more of a paranormal or creepy or horror-esque book, this isn't gonna hit right, because it's more horror in terms of the reality of being Indigenous. Yeah, but I ultimately love Nick Medina's work. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, full vlog out soon, or else I will also link the live show. Definitely be continuing on with his work. And then after I finished that, because that ended, like I finished that and it was just really heavy, and I had like an hour before midnight, and so I decided to also pick up Taproot by Keezy Young, and it's a story about a gardener and a ghost. And basically, yeah, it's about following Hamal, who is a gardener who can see ghosts. One of the ghosts that he sees is Blue, and Blue is kind of a troublemaker. Not so much, I mean, there's something going on, but they both have issues like telling each other. So when Blue keeps seeing this like dead forest, like he keeps disappearing and going into this other forest, this dead forest, where a reaper confronts him saying that there's a necromancer in the midst, and that Blue needs to help them find who this necromancer is. Blue's like really scared and not knowing what to do, and things ensue. Ultimately really cute. The style is really fun. I wish it was a little more tidy, but ultimately, like, enjoyed it. It was just a good, fun read, quick read, before having to go to bed, and just needed a little pick-me-up. So yeah. But yeah, those are the books that I read for the month of May. Have you read any of these? What were your thoughts on them? That was a lot. I feel like I've been talking forever. Let's see, what was your favorite book that you read in May? If you don't feel like answering, you don't have the spoons, let's go ahead and put a fish emoji for Salmon Wars. It doesn't necessarily have to be a salmon, but some kind of fish emoji I think would be fun and different. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Like this video, subscribe if you have yet to do so, and I hope that you are in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading. I will see you in another video very soon. Cheers.